Criminal Women Wednesday, but on a Thursday. So as always, let's pin this comment at the bottom so people can drop in and know exactly who we're talking about, okay? So I postponed yesterday, but I am back today as promised on October 1st, 2020. If you are a government employee, happy Federal New Year, okay? So this week's criminal woman is from the UK, and she goes by the name, well, she went by the name of Ruth Ellis, okay? So Ruth Ellis, hard life is a supreme understatement. Ruth Ellis had an uphill battle almost from the day she was born, right? So her parents moved all over the place, all over the UK, and when they finally settled, Ruth was about 14 years old, and she decided at that point, I'm quitting school, I'm going to work, okay? So when she quit school, she went to work as a nightclub hostess, basically, right? So around 3 years later, she's still working as a hostess, but the owner of the club was blackmailing women into sleeping with him, right? So she ended up doing a short stint in prostitution, but as you will find out later, it's not her only stint in prostitution. Like, Ruth was good to sell the taco, okay? So she ends up working at the nightclub or whatever, and she meets a lot of wealthy people, of course, because a lot of wealthy men come in and out of this club. So she meets a military man who is already married, and he knocks her up. Okay, baby number one, right? So she ends up having this baby. And for about a year after the baby is born, the dad, who is the soldier, keeps sending her child support, for lack of a better word. He sends her money every month. But after a year, he just stops sending money. So, of course, broke, again, Ruth sends the baby to live with her mother, okay? And she goes back to work. So while doing her prostitution thing at this club, she gets knocked up again by one of the clients. So she doesn't keep this baby. She goes ahead and has an illegal abortion. And you know, Ruth had a really good work ethic for what she did, because she had the abortion and went right back to work, okay? So she continues to work or whatever, and she meets this guy named George Ellis. So she and George kind of fall in love, but George was an alcoholic, he was abusive, and he was also jealous. So they have this off and on relationship to where, you know, George constantly accuses her of cheating, flirting, being with other men, etc., etc. So Ruth leaves, comes back, leaves, comes back. They have this on and off again relationship, right? But even though George Ellis was a dick, basically, that's not the man she kills, okay? So she then meets, while she's working at the club, she meets a race car driver by the name of David Blakely. So she and Blakely have this whirlwind romance, and he moves into her flat, and lo and behold, here come relationship issues again. So Blakely and Ruth Ellis, they continue to fight. They have a very tumultuous relationship, and Ruth comes back, you know, that same song and dance. So even though Blakely had offered to marry Ruth, Ruth was like, I don't know, because I don't feel the same way about you that you feel about me. And so they start seeing other people. They're living together, still kind of doing their thing, and then also doing their side thing. You know, I guess there was a mutual agreement between the two. And she ends up dating this guy by the last name of Cussin, right? So Cussin and Ruth are doing their thing. Blakely and whoever he's dating is doing his thing. And they keep meeting in the middle and, you know, doing their thing together, right? So one day, you know, Blakely offers to marry Ruth again. She says no thanks, and then they get into a fight. Well, Ruth was pregnant again for Blakely, right? And so the fight got so bad that around January 1955, they had a big fight, and Blakely punched her in the stomach, and she lost the baby. Okay? So about 4 months later, on Easter Sunday, Ruth was hanging out with her boyfriend, cousin, and, Blakely was out with his friend. They went to a pub or whatever. So Ruth sets out to find Blakely for whatever reason, because they had a really bad relationship at this point. And she sees, she catches a cab to the pub, and she sees David Blakely and his friend exit a pub. And so she pays the taxi driver, and she follows them down the block, and she waits outside of the apartment complex, where they dipped into to dip right back out. Like, they just stopped off at an apartment complex and they came right back out. So Ruth was standing there on the curb waiting for them to come out so she could talk to David, right? So David comes out and doesn't even acknowledge Ruth, right? And so he walks right by her, and she says, "Hello, David." David ignores her, and now he's like visibly startled, because he didn't expect to see Ruth, A, following him, and B, stalking him, and she didn't know where he was, or he didn't tell her where he was gonna be. So she then gets a little louder and says, "David." And at that point, David has took off down the street. He's fumbling for his keys to get into his car to drive away, to get away from Ruth, right? So Ruth, at this point, takes out a gun, and she starts firing all up in the street. The first bullet misses, and David takes off running. The second bullet hits David. He drops to the ground. And she then stands over him and fires the rest of the clip. One bullet hit his throat, one bullet hit his intestines, one bullet hit his liver, and one bullet hit his heart. Now, there was a sixth shell bullet in the chamber, and she decided, for whatever reason, rather than waste it on David, I'm just going to shoot it into the ground. So when she shoots it into the ground, it ricochets, and it strikes an onlooker, a bystander. Just a slight wound, but still frightening nonetheless. So after she does this, of course, David is dead. David is cold. An off-duty cop arrests her, and they book her, of course. So when they take her into holding, and, they question her or whatever, medical doctors, hey Corey, medical doctors came to examine her. They couldn't find any signs of insanity. A second examiner came to evaluate her. They couldn't find any signs of insanity, right? So they deem her as fit to stand trial, basically, right? So the funny thing is, when the police initially arrested Ruth, she made a statement to the effect of, "I killed him, I'm a little bit confused." So that is why the medical examiners were called in to evaluate her, because who says that when they're arrested? No one in their right mind, or shouldn't in their right mind, confess to a crime just willy-nilly like that. So she says, "I shot him, I killed him, I'm a little confused." So, but anyway, they find out that Ruth is perfectly saying she's fit to stand trial, right? So Ruth, this whole time, very pretty woman, she was fine, Coke bottle fine for back in the day, right? So on the day of her trial, Ruth shows up flawless, honey, flawless, with a silk blouse and a black overcoat, freshly bleached blonde hair, to the T. And so her lawyer was like, "Where are you going looking like that? You're supposed to look like some homely, borderline insane criminal defendant. You look pretty put together. They're gonna, put you in jail." So Ruth was like, "Whatever, I'm fly. Let's get it on, get it on the road." So during the trial, the prosecutor asks Ruth, when you shot him, what did you intend to do? Hey, Christine, what did you intend to do? Ruth get on the stand and says point blank, I think it's pretty obvious when I shot him, I intended to kill him. Sis. So needless to say, it took the jury 20 minutes to convict Ruth Ellis of first-degree murder of David Blakely, right? So Ruth now is in holding. She's going to be executed by hanging. Now, this isn't like the last one with Paula Angel where everything went wrong with that hanging. The UK got it on the money the first time. And so Ruth is now known, and she's famous for being the last woman in the United Kingdom to be executed by hanging. And her hanging took place at Holloway Prison, and she was initially buried in what we call in America the Potter's Field, which is, where no-name criminal defendants and executees end up being laid to rest when they're executed if they have no next of kin and no one's come to claim the body. They put them in what's called a Potter's Field. So she was initially put in the equivalent in the UK of a Potter's Field, right? Until they moved her into a Catholic cemetery sometime later in life. So Ruth was relatively young when she was executed. She was born in 1922, I believe, and they executed her in 1955. So not very old to say she has such a hard life. Like I said before, Ruth was into nude modeling, underage escort work, prostitution. She had 2 abortions, one for the client from the prostitution ring and one for another man that she got pregnant for. And she also ended up she kept 2 children, one for the soldier and one for George Ellis, right? So very, very hard life, very tragic end to her life. But that is the story of how Ruth Ellis got in the middle of the street, broad daylight, pulled out a gun, and emptied the clip into her lover, David Blakely. Now, I need you to like and share and subscribe to this video. If you liked it, you can also catch me on Spotify. This will also be a podcast. Next week, we're going to talk about Rajvinder Kaur from the UK again. She was an Indian woman who had finally had enough of the mother-in-law from hell. Stay tuned. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.